Hi, I am ALOK and welcome to my YouTube channel. बच्चों, we started summarizing Upinder Singh's book, and I told you that in this book there are 10 chapters, but before first chapter we have one introductory chapter what is called Ideas of the Early Indian Past, and here we have some issues. So we started discussing those issues like we talked about description of Puranas, Bharatvarsha, how Chinese, Persians they referred to India. Then we mentioned main physiographic zones of subcontinent. We also mentioned what is history, periodization of the Indian past, script. So we talked about all this. So we were still discussing the introductory chapter. There are two more issues in this introductory chapter. You can say 8, you can say 9, right? So two more issues we will discuss, and then we can take up our first chapter. Fine. So the next sub issue, or you can say sub topic, is what is called periodization. What is called, that how the changing interpretation. But before that, the last video uh, I gave you one question, and some of you, attempted also. I would request you to attempt those questions, right? And if you will start attempting, I will include more question. Fine. So the answer of this question would be B, right? Answer would be B, right? So of this question, answer would be B. So the last video we gave this question, correct? So if you will start attempting these question, I will be adding more. Fine. Right. So now the next, the topic we will be taking is changing interpretation of early Indian history. So Upinder Singh mentioned that there is always a change, right? In interpretation of early Indian history, or you can say there is a change in historiography. There is a change in historiography. Change in historiography. So what is historiography? Historiography means the study of how history has been written and interpreted over time. So the interpretation of early Indian history has changed significantly over time. Why this change? Why there is always a right change in interpretation? How history interpreted, how history right interpreted differently, right? In different period of time, because probably new archaeological discoveries provided fresh evidence, right? New archaeological discoveries provided fresh evidence, probably because new sources have been discovered, sometime new inscription, new coins, new literary sources. Then historians also adopted different methods and approaches, and therefore there was a changing interpretation. Then even some social and political changes also influenced historical writing. So there was always a change in historiography, always a change in historiography, right? So what you have to remember that same historical event interpreted differently by different historians in different time. Fine. Like if you can, right, remember that earlier there was colonial approach, then there was nationalist approach, Then there was Marxist approach. Then there was subaltern approach. Upinder Singh never mentioned it, but still you can remember it, that subaltern approach. Then there was multidisciplinary approach. Multidisciplinary approach. Right? So this kind of approach you will see, right? Colonial approach, nationalist approach, Marxist approach, subaltern approach, multidisciplinary approach. But Upinder Singh suggested that don't consider it as a, you can say, a sequence based approach, right? Don't consider it as a sequence based approach, that this approach came after that, this approach was replaced by this approach, then nationalist approach was replaced by Marxist approach. No, right? This is not that simple, right? So the reality is more complex, correct? So you will see that colonial approach was replaced by nationalist approach. No, both survived. Sometime nationalist colonial survived together, nationalist Marxist survived together. So different school often coexisted. This you have to understand, different school coexisted. But yes, the dominant approach became nationalist, then after some time dominant approach became Marxist, like that. So different schools often coexisted, and historians from different schools debated each other. Many historians combined ideas from more than one approach, right? Even older interpretations sometimes continued and new ones emerged. So, historiography developed through discussion, debate, revision, not through simple replacement. Right? Don't consider that, right? It developed through replacement. No. Fine. So, I hope you are getting it. Upinder Singh mentioned it, that various school of history writing, right? They, of course, they were there, but and there were considerable variety also among them, but they coexisted, fine, they coexisted, fine. So this you have to remember, and you can always remember at least three approach, right? You can remember three approach. One is what you call development in 18th 19th century, European approach. Development in 18th 19th century, what is called European approach. European approach, development in 18th 19th century, European approach, it is said. Fine, European approach. And this European approach is mainly 18th and 19th century. It was dominated by European writers, right? So part one is European approach, 18th 19th century, according to Upinder Singh. European approach. And initially some, right, the employees of East India Company contributed. They started writing about India, they started translating Indian books. So initially the employees of East India Company contributed. They were called Orientalist, they were called Indologist, right? This term you have to remember. So initially in 18th 19th century, Europeans contributed in history writing. They were called Orientalist, they were called Indologist, they were also called antiquarians. Antiquarians. Upinder Singh mentioned this word, antiquarians. So they wanted to know India. They wanted to know India because they were interested in ruling over India. They wanted to know India. They did something like they established Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. They established Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. They started deciphering script, Brahmi script, Kharoshthi script. They started discovering some prehistoric tools, right? Then even archaeological survey of India established, right? So these are some contribution of Europeans, right? But Gradually in 19th century, right, they started, dividing Indian history into three part: Hindu India, Muslim India, British India. Then they started writing Indian history with their agendas, right? They wanted to justify their rule. Correct. So I hope you understood that there is a changing interpretation of early Indian history. And the first approach was colonial approach, 18th, 19th century. European developed it. Correct. They contributed also. Why they contributed? Because they systematize our history. They wrote about history. They attempted to write about history, but they had their own agenda. They presented Indian ruler as absolute ruler, right? And they always tried to justify their rule. Correct. So you understood the first part, 18th, 19th century. Then the second part is nationalist. Second part is nationalist. Right? They started reacting. It was a reaction against this interpretation, European interpretation. Nationalist was reacting. They searched for golden ages. Search for golden ages. Right? So they started searching golden ages in Gupta period, Vedic period. Now they also brought South India into the narrative. Right? So these are contribution of nationalist. Now they started talking about non-monarchical polities also. Right? So these are contribution of nationalist. So they also contributed nationalist. And Upinder Singh mentioned a great nationalist historian. His name was R.C. Majumdar. Remember this? So Upinder Singh mentioned one name called R.C. Majumdar. R.C. Majumdar. So R.C. Majumdar was a very important, very popular nationalist historian. There are many in your NCRT. We have K.P. Jaiswal, P.V. Kane, right? So these names are given in our NCRT, old NCRT, R.S. Sharma. But Upinder Singh suggested R.C. Majumdar. So there was a European writing, then there was nationalist writing. This is okay. European writing, then there was nationalist writing. And nationalist writers, historians, they were reacting against the European writing. They were searching for the golden age, right? They were highlighting the achievements of our rulers, Asoka, Samudragupta, right? And they were also known for discovering the non-monarchical polities. Then in 1950s, Marxist writing, Marxist historiography, you can see, Marxist historiography, you can see. So now there was a shift of focus from political narrative to socio-economic narrative. With Marxist, you can see shift in focus, political narrative to the socio-economic narrative. Correct? So therefore, Marxist is very important. Marxist historiography is important because they started uncovering the history of non-elite groups, So Marxists, they are also important for this. They started talking about marginalized section, and they also started giving more importance to archaeological data. So Marxist also contributed. And Upinder Singh talked about a pioneer of Marxist historiography, D.D. Kosambi, pioneer in Marxist historiography, D.D. Kosambi. Then gradually subaltern school talked about, right, those sections which were not highlighted by others, So a subaltern school, we will be more, highlight, focusing on subaltern school in modern India. Upinder Singh did not mention subaltern, so therefore I am not elaborating. And then came the multidisciplinary approach, and Upinder Singh also belonged to this approach, multidisciplinary approach. So Upinder Singh mainly talked about three phases: European writing, then nationalist writing, and then Marxist writing. So changing interpretation of early Indian history. I hope you understood this. Now, we will see some important conclusion Upinder Singh made. Right, these conclusions are very important in writing answers. Right, so just see what all conclusion Upinder Singh, mentioned. Like you can mention final comments of Upinder Singh. Upinder Singh suggested that history is not one but many stories, only a few of which have as yet been written. So history is still developing. History is not one but many stories, only a few of which have as yet been written. Then Upinder Singh suggested that texts and archaeology generate different sorts of historical narrative. We have two generally source, text and archaeology, but Upinder Singh suggested that they generate different sorts of historical narrative, and she suggested that historians generally use archaeological evidence selectively as a corroborative source when it matches hypotheses based on their interpretation of text. She suggested a more sophisticated approach towards textual study has to be accompanied by a proper incorporation of archaeological evidence. Right? So she suggested that there should be a proper incorporation of archaeological evidence. These sentences can be used in your answer in history optional, or if they ask you question in general studies regarding sources. So she suggested that there should be more or proper incorporation of archaeological evidence. She suggested that history of early India should ideally represent the various regions and communities of the subcontinent in all their diversity. Right, so right now northeast is not represented, so she suggested that we should use archaeological evidence more. Right, we should include more regions in our history. There should be more representation of various regions and communities in our history. I hope you are getting it. These are suggestions of Upinder Singh, that various regions and communities, right, they should be represented in our history. These are good suggestions. Then she also suggested that the past of the people who have hidden from history has to be uncovered and written. The past of people who have hidden from history has to be uncovered and written. Exploration of gender, the family, and the household need to be pushed further and have to become part of larger social histories. These are some suggestions made by Upinder Singh. Our understanding of the history of the subcontinents tends to be far too insular, and much greater attention needs to be paid to its relationship with other areas, especially East Asia and Southeast Asia. She said that it should be connected, our history should be connected to East Asia and Southeast Asia. And then she also suggested that history shapes identity and remains politically contested. So, while vulnerable to distortion, objective historical inquiry is essential. Objective historical inquiry is essential. These are some comment you can use, and these are for main examination, not for preliminary examination. So these are some suggestions made by Upinder Singh. So these are more important for optional, right? But even GS it can be asked. We don't know. So whatever we added here, the ideas of Upinder Singh, these are for main examination, not for preliminary examination. Is that correct? Now, with this background, we will take up chapter number 1. What we did, the introductory chapter, we talked about introductory chapters, right? So, some issues I highlighted, which was highlighted by Upinder Singh. And now, with this background, we can go for, right, chapter 1, right? So, now start the chapter 1. Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is what? Sources. Understanding literary and archaeological sources. Chapter 1. So, chapter 1 is related to sources. Right? So, we have two sources, literary and archaeological. Upinder Singh started this chapter with a man called Kalhan. Have you heard about Kalhan? Right. So, Upinder Singh started this chapter with Kalhan. Have you heard about Kalhan? Who was Kalhan? You know why Upinder Singh started this chapter with Kalhan? Because Kalhan is considered as India's first historian. Kalhan, a Kashmiri historian, Kashmiri Brahmin who wrote Raj Tarangini. Yes. So he is known as India's first historian. India's first historian. Important, remember. And he gives us a book, Raj Tarangini, which was completed in 12th century. It means what? Before Kalhan, there was no historian. Yes. Before Kalhan, there was no historian. He is considered India's first historian. Right? So, Upinder Singh started with Kalhan. So, who was Kalhan? Can you consider him as a first historian? Why he is considered as first historian? Do we have any limitation of Kalhan? These are some areas Upinder Singh discussed. Fine. So, who was Kalhan? And I told you Kalhan. Kalhan was a Brahmin. Kalhan was a Brahmin. And his father was Chanpaka. Upinder Singh mentioned it. So, therefore, I am also mentioning it. Upinder Singh mentioned it. His father was Chanpaka. He wrote a book called Raj Tarangini, River of Kings. Book was completed in 12th century, 1150. And it consists of 8 cantons, 8 tarang. In Raj Tarangini, you have 8 tarang. 8 tarang. And it gives us a story of King of Kashmir from the early ones to the historical ruler of 12th century. He is considered as India's first historian. Kalhan. He wrote Raj Tarangini, completed his book in 12th century. But question can be asked on analysis of Kalhan. Upinder Singh analyzed Kalhan. Just read, just see this analysis. Right? Why he is considered as a first historian? Just see why. Because he asserts in the Raj Tarangini that a person who recounts the events of the past must do so like a judge, without bias, without prejudice. He used all sources because he belonged to a good family. He used different sources. He was objective. He was writing without bias, without prejudice. Therefore, he is considered as true historian. But he does not always distinguish between fact and legend. Remember it. He often explains events by citing fate. Moreover, he considered himself primarily a gifted poet, a skillful poet. So he was more like a poet. right? He described the natural beauty of Kashmir with pride. He was known for dramatic representation of events, characters. So he had some limitation, but he is considered as the first historian. But you try to remember, you should know that he is known as first historian, and you should also know that what all limitations he had as a historian. I hope you are appreciating the importance of Upinder Singh, right? So these are unique analysis, very good analysis, and you can get all this thing only in Upinder Singh. Correct? So I told you that this chapter is started with Kalhan. Who was Kalhan? And he wrote a book, Raj Tarangini. But after Kalhan also there were three more Raj Tarangini. So there is first Raj Tarangini, there is second Raj Tarangini, there is third Raj Tarangini, there is fourth Raj Tarangini. Do you know this? Kalhan's Raj Tarangini was the first. Then we have second Raj Tarangini by Jon Raj, third Raj Tarangini by Srivar, fourth Raj Tarangini by Pragya Bhatt, and it was finally compiled by Suka. So there are four Raj Tarangini mentioned in our text, but Upinder Singh right now mentioned first Raj Tarangini. But I added four Raj Tarangini. Is that fine? Now, so in this first chapter, Upinder Singh started with Kalhan. Then Upinder Singh elaborated that why we need sources. What is the need of sources? Do we need sources? Why we need sources? Without source, can we write history? No. So the next thing Upinder Singh elaborated was why we need sources. Why we need sources. Why we need sources. Upinder Singh said that the past, like the present, is complex. Past is complex. Upinder Singh said that past is complex. Like present, past is also complex. Right? And you can appreciate this complexity only by looking at it from many perspectives. So there cannot be a single final perfect history. Remember this. Right? That there cannot be a single final perfect history. There can never be a complete or exact picture of what happened in the past because past is complex. So the task of historian is to bring us as close as possible to such a picture. Right? So the historian's task is what? To bring us as close as possible to such a picture. And for this, we need, they need different sources. Yes or no? They need different sources. So historical analysis involves carefully examining the available sources. Whatever sources we have to examine it carefully. Historians will have to examine it carefully. Then they should also search for fresh evidence. Yes or no? They should also search for fresh evidence. So what historians should do? Historians should carefully examine whatever sources we have, available sources. Then they should also search for fresh evidence. And they should also devise creative, innovative ways of interpreting historical data. They should ask new questions. They should search for new answers. So the task of historian is important. Task of historian is important. Right? So we have different sources. We need different sources. I hope you are getting my point. We need different sources. According to Upinder Singh, we need different sources. And what historians should do, historians should carefully examine the available sources, search for fresh evidence. They should search for fresh evidence. They should devise creative, innovative ways of interpreting historical data. They should involve themselves in asking new questions, searching new answers. So these all are the task of historian, right? So for a new student, these kind of analysis can be boring, right? But these are important. Fine. Then, so Upinder Singh said that there are two sources, literary and archaeological. So all the texts are literary, indigenous and foreign. All the texts are literary sources, and all the material remains, like for example inscription, coins, right? Then monuments, potteries, these all are archaeological sources, right? So we have more text, and now we are moving towards more archaeology. So we have two type of sources, literary sources and archaeological sources. I will be elaborating it, right? So Upinder Singh talked about it in detail. We will take up many examples of literary sources and archaeological sources. Then Upinder Singh talked about that there are some issues with the ancient text. Ancient texts are important, but you cannot depend on them. There are some issues with the ancient text, Upinder Singh said, literary texts. So Upinder Singh said that there are some issues with the ancient texts. There are some issues with the ancient texts. We cannot just depend on them. They are not a simple or direct reflection of the society, right? Upinder Singh said that these texts, they do not offer a simple or direct reflection of the society, right? So they are not giving you a simple direct reflection. No direct reflection of society, no direct reflection of society. So therefore Upinder Singh said that information has to be teased out. Information has to be teased out, has to be teased out, right? Has to be teased out with care, with skill. So it is not that easy to use these ancient texts. I hope you are appreciating. It is not that easy to use the ancient text. They are not that simple or direct. They constitute a complex representation of that society, refracted image of the past, and therefore information has to be teased out. So the task of historian is difficult. So Upinder Singh suggested that the ancient text does not necessarily offer a simple or direct reflection. So it constitutes a complex representation of that society and refracted image of the past. So information has to be teased out with care. And many religious texts were not primarily meant to be read, but to be recited, to be heard, to be performed. So they were not for history. Many religious texts of ancient India, they were not for history, they were for different purposes. And they were passed on orally, right? Passed on orally from one generation to the next. Later, it was compiled. So it was initially written in the form of manuscript. So in India, in ancient India, we have our ancient text in the form of manuscript. So there was no paper in India. Yes or no? There was no paper in India. But paper was developed in China. In China, there was paper, but in India, there was no paper, and it was written on palm leaf. So, manuscript. So, Upinder Singh talked about manuscript. So, in China, there was paper. Paper was, remember it, paper was invented in China in the 3rd century BC. Then, in the 4th century, bamboo strips developed as a standard material for writing. Then, wood block printing was probably used later in 6th century. So, China, there was development, paper and printing. But in India, there was a manuscript, Talpatra. It is called Talpatra in Sanskrit, Olai in Tamil. Remember, Olai, 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 Olai in Tamil, and Talpatra in Sanskrit. Two type of, Talpatra was used. One was Talipot palm, and second was Palmyra palm. And Talipot palm was, the leaf of this palm was larger, thinner, more flexible. So in India, the text were written, of course, but manuscript was there. China paper was there, but in India manuscript was there. Press came in India, you can say, with the Europeans. So there was two type of leaves used in manuscript. Generally, talpatra was used. Even copper plate was also used, right? So, but initially talpatra was used. And remember, Sanskrit it is called Talpatra, and Tamil it is called Olai. Remember it, Olai. So how this Talpatra developed, how the palm leaf manuscript developed. So first of all, leaves were selected, then they were cut and boiled, then they were dried, then they were polished, then they were written on, you can say they were ready for writing. So it was the writer engraved letters on the leaf with stylus called salakha. Then they were applying ink. Then they were wiping, binding. Binding was also done. So this was a process followed. So it was mentioned in Upinder Singh. So how the binding? How the binding? So you can see this kind of binding was there. So how the binding? Upinder Singh mentioned that the selected leaves were cut to the right shape and size. They were then pierced in 1, 2, or 3 places. Then a string was woven through these holes. Then one end of the string was knotted or tied to a small object. And then there was a cover also, and it was made of wood, dry palm petioles, or in rare cases, ivory also. So these manuscripts were properly developed, then they were written, then there was a binding. So it was very difficult to preserve them. It was very difficult to preserve them. So how they were preserved? So it was very difficult to preserve them. So in preservation, there was what you call fumigation, right? Then they were treated with insecticides. So how they were preserved? How they were preserved? So Upinder Singh mentioned it. How they were preserved? They were fumigated. Then they were treated with insecticide, thionyl, chloromate solution, formaldehyde, phosphine gas, ethylene oxide. Then these leaves are cleaned. using solvents. Then if there are some damage, they were repaired. And then once the repair was complete, the leaves were oiled. So this way they were preserved. So all this elaborated in Upinder Singh, and therefore it is sometimes considered as a boring book, correct? But you know the importance of this, all this. Anything can be asked. So the manuscripts, how they were developed, they were compiled, they were, preserved. So very difficult. These were some issues with the ancient text. Upinder Singh said it was not easy to write ancient Indian history. Then there was a next issue of age and authorship. Who wrote these manuscript, when it was written, yes or no? So there was next issue, like issue of age and authorship. When these manuscripts were written, who wrote them? There were different chronological layers. There were different editions, interpolations over time. There were not one but many authors. So these all are issues. These all are issues with ancient text Upinder Singh talked about. So very difficult to write ancient Indian history, Upinder Singh asserted. So issue of age and authorship. Then Upinder Singh highlighted that all these texts were of different languages. Ancient text, we have different languages. So Upinder Singh talked about different families of languages. You know this. Upinder Singh talked about different families of languages. So next thing Upinder Singh said was there are different families of languages. We have Indo-European family, Dravidian family of language, then Austro-Asiatic family of language, Sino-Tibetan or Burman families of languages. So there were different families of languages. Upinder Singh talked about that. Like the first family was Indo-European family. Indo-European family. So in Indo-European family of languages, we have Hindi, Punjabi, Marathi, Bengali, Assamese. But most important is Sanskrit. Remember all this. Sanskrit belonged to Indo-Iranian branch of Indo-European family. Even ancient Pali, Prakrit belonged to the same. Upinder Singh said Sanskrit can be divided into pre-classical and classical. Remember this, important. Sanskrit can be divided into pre-classical and classical. And both are different. Pre-classical Sanskrit of Vedic period and the classical Sanskrit of Kalidas. So the classical Sanskrit started when? In the 4th, 5th century, classical Sanskrit. The term classical Sanskrit refers to the language whose rulers were codified by the 5th or 4th century BCE. Right? And Panini in his Ashtadhyay, remember it, Panini in his Ashtadhyay developed that. It is the base, whose rules were codified by Panini in his Ashtadhyay. Then after Ashtadhyay, there was Patanjali's Mahabhasya. in the 2nd century BC. Then for your preliminary examination, you can remember the oldest surviving Prakrit grammar is Varruchi. Varruchi's Prakrit Prakasaka. Prakrit Prakas. Prakrit Prakas. So this can be asked. The oldest surviving Prakrit grammar is Varruchi's Prakrit Prakas. The date is debated, not known. And then we have various dialects of Prakrit: Maharashtri, Saurseni, Magadhi. And Upbhrams is a term used for further development of Prakrit up to the end of the 1st millennium CE. So these are Indo-European family, and for our preliminary examination, you can remember Varruchi's Prakrit Prakas. So this is one family, Indo-European family. Then we have second family, Dravidian family. In Dravidian family, you have Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, Tulu. And among the Dravidian language, Tamil is the oldest. Remember Tamil, and the oldest Tamil grammar is Tolkappiyam. These are mentioned right in Upinder Singh in this context. Later we will be elaborating all this. Then we have Austro-Asiatic family. We have Santhali, Khasi, Mundari. Then we have Tibeto-Burmese family, Manipuri, northeastern language. Andamanis is not related to any known language families, according to Upinder Singh. Fine. So these are 4 families. Upinder Singh mentioned 4 families. Right? First is Indo-European family. Second is Dravidian family of language. Third is Austro-Asiatic family of language. Fourth is Tibeto-Burmese family. So Upinder Singh first provided this background, and then she started talking about Upinder Singh started talking about the different sources, different text. Fine. So now we will be taking Vedas, Mahakavyas, Puranas, right? Inscriptions, coins, all those things which Upinder Singh talked about. So this book is right very comprehensive, and we will try to discuss all these pages very carefully. So thanks a lot for joining. The story will continue.